to our first series of the Louisiana Blue Team's newest podcast called Louisiana Blue Team Hits the Road. It is a podcast where myself, as the Director of Communications, goes around the state of Louisiana and meets with our local candidates running for local offices, running for state, federal, or party internal offices, so that the voters out there who are members of the Louisiana Blue Team can get to know our candidates a little bit more. And today, I am so excited to be here in Lafayette with Miss Kathy Hurst, or those who know her, Kathy Hurst. She is our first guest, and she so graciously came on board with us. So Kathy, thank you for coming on board.
Well, thank you.
Miss Kathy, she has had numerous accolades here in Lafayette as she served the public here. One, she is no stranger to the DSCC board. She's currently the DSCC 43A representative, and she has served in that position for how many years now?
Since 2019.
Since 2019. So this is your second term.
It's my second full term.
Second full
I
term.
was appointed to a vacancy in 2019, and then 2020 I ran for a full term. Had opposition, and won that race during COVID, which was something else to run during COVID.
You beat that candidate,
yes,
even during the midst of COVID.
Yes,
Wow.
and with the election date moved 3 times.
It was moved. So you had opposition after opposition, really. A person, COVID, and then moving dates.
Right, and my opposition was somebody who had run for state rep the year before in that district, who had run a full campaign for state rep.
Really? So you
Yeah.
beat out a state representative too.
Well, she wasn't elected to state rep,
But
she had run for it as the Democratic candidate.
All
So,
right.
had commercials and going door to door and
So she had the name
canvassing.
recognition already going out,
Right.
circulating.
Right.
Well, Kathy is not only a successful candidate within the DSCC, she is also an attorney at law here in Lafayette. And Kathy, how long have you been serving here in Lafayette as attorney?
Since 1993. I've been an attorney since 1992. I clerked my first year for Judge Kitty Kimball, who later, about a year later, became the first woman on the Louisiana Supreme Court.
Really?
Yep, and she was great to learn from, and and then I moved back to Lafayette, where I'm originally from here. Graduated from UL and graduated from high school here, and my family was here, so I wanted to come back home.
Oh, fantastic. So you've had a life of service, from attorney to now stepping into politics. And Kathy does not just stop at winning the election, she is also pushing ahead for the DSCC Executive Committee elections. And this election is determining the party's leadership. So we already had the pool of DSCC members, which stands for Democratic State Central Committee. And then amongst themselves, they determine their executive committee membership and leadership positions. Kathy is our candidate for this executive committee's parliamentarian position. Now, right before we got started with this, and we'll get all into politics in just a minute, but Kathy was here telling me all about her MRA Famous Animals.
Yes.
Now, it's pugs, right?
Right. Well, I had 2 pugs and a peekapoo, and in Lafayette we have a Mardi Gras parade called Crew de Chien, which is the crew of dogs. And 2 of my dogs, my pug Cookie and my peekapoo Molly, were both queens of the parade. And then my other pug, Ava, and my peekapoo Molly were grand marshals of the parade. And it's an annual thing. It's all to raise money for our local animal charities. All the entry fees. And then I've been a business sponsor of it the last few years. And again, all the money goes to our local animal rescues. And it's a fun little family-friendly parade. My great nephews come in from Texas to be in it with us, and they just love it. We have a good time with it. So.
Fantastic. And I noticed that when I looked up there, there's pictures of her pugs. I wish y'all could see it. It's got emeralds wrapped around it with a big crown on her pug's head. And apparently they're famous here in Lafayette. She's had clients come here and recognize the pugs.
I told Colby, I had a client walking out one time, leaving from an appointment. They're like, "Wait, is that your dog? I know that dog. Wasn't she queen of the parade?" Yeah. Well, Well, look, one time I called our vet's office and was asking for advice about something after hours because they're open 24/7. And actually, our vet was in Baton Rouge because my oldest dog had diabetes and it was a specialty. But anyway, I called and I was talking to the vet tech and telling her my question and trying to explain to her who I was and told her my name. And I was getting nowhere with that. And then finally I was like, well, you probably know my pug, Cookie. And she was like, oh, wait, you're Cookie's mom? Okay, hold on, let me go find the vet on duty. So I was like, it was a little humbling because, like, my name meant nothing to them.
But Cookies did.
But Cookies did. And that got me exactly what I needed. And I'm like, yeah, Cookie's mom. I should have said that from the get-go.
Well, so, when they're royalty, you just got to lead with that.
Right, yeah. Right. When you're the mother of the queen, you just have to defer to her.
Correct. Yeah, as it should be, right?
Right.
Only in Louisiana, right?
It was a little humbling because I'm like, okay, my position as an attorney and whatever means nothing, but my dog is the queen of the Mardi Gras. So
now, how
only in Louisiana
does the Mardi Gras crew elect Cookie? Like, how do they become royalty?
Well, back then, actually, it was a raffle back then when Cookie was queen, and you paid into it, and then it was picked randomly. And Cookie bought more than one ticket, let's just say, to up her odds. And
so that's what you have to do, right?
Right. And the money all went to charity. It's a fundraiser for all of our local animal rescues. So it's all for a good cause.
Oh, fantastic! I know. When you were telling me the story about it, I was thinking, did they have little doggy campaigns? And is that where your family got the start of being in politics? But it's a raffle charity.
I've been involved in politics my whole adult life. So
I mean, it would have been quite a story, though, if
that
Cookie would have been the initiator of it.
It would have been.
Fighting for puppy causes and charity work for shelters and humane societies.
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you for sharing with your story about the royalty here and in Mardi Gras. But let's go ahead and jump right into why we came here today.
Okay.
So let the voters get to know more about you, Kathy, and running for Parliamentarian. Right. Now, I know this is an internal election, so voters aren't really going to elect you as Parliamentarian. It's going to be other DSCC representatives who they elected to be in that position.
Correct.
So let's start out with...
But I'd like to say, voters can influence their representative as to who they would want in that position, at least potentially. Now, we have a couple of area candidates who say they're going to rely on what their voters want. I don't know how they're going to poll them, but you can always contact your DSCC representative and weigh in what you think.
That's an excellent point. I'm glad you pointed that out. That even though it is internal DSCC elections, the voters still ultimately can have an influence on it.
Correct.
And you said for them to contact their DSCC reps?
Correct.
Now, we just had the election for DSCC and DPEC. I would assume their contact information isn't up yet.
It's not up yet. The party did reach out this past week to get everybody's contact information, to put that online. And now the current membership is I would think would still be what's up. And they haven't updated it yet, but they will update that.
And it will be on the Louisiana Democratic website, right?
Louisiana Democratic Party, correct.
Okay, fantastic. So we want to encourage voters to, once the website has been updated, go out there and see who your elected DSCC reps are, and also stay tuned to Louisiana Blue Team, as we're going to put up all the candidates as well, so that you know who is running and a little bit more about them. So, Kathy, we know DSCC stands for Democratic State Central Committee. What do they do, and who are they?
Well, they are the governing body of the state party. To make decisions over the state party. Unfortunately, for the last 4 years, the chair we have had has not been responsive to the governing body like she should. So hopefully we'll have a change in chair who will follow what their governing body wants them to do.
Okay. And you say that DSCC governs the party's affairs. What does that look like? What does the party itself have affairs over?
Well, one of the big things is endorsing candidates, recruiting candidates, raising money to help candidates, are all things that they should be doing.
Okay, so really getting into the community and finding candidates, finding, like I said, fundraising, but also rallying voters. So they should be like the big encouraging
Right, it
engine.
should be a good get out the vote effort.
Okay, yeah, exactly. So they should be active.
Which the fall elections of 2023 show us that the current state chair did not have a good get out the vote effort. The participation rates were abysmal.
I remember sitting back and I wanted to get involved in 2023 elections, but also I was new to Baton Rouge, new to getting into politics, and I was like, well, let me just sit back and kind of watch what the party does and take a lead from them.
Right.
And it was so disappointing to see that the party never stepped up. They didn't start fundraising, or I don't know if they didn't fundraise, but campaigning for a governor until way, way, way too late into the race.
That's one of the things. It's one of the things that happened during this last term that made me want to run for parliamentarian, because they passed new bylaws under pressure from the chair, without even proper notice to us to review them, with the promise that any revisions that need to be made would be made. That was March of 2022. We're in April of 2024 and no revisions were made. And one of the things that they put in the current bylaws is a provision that we can't endorse any candidates until after qualifying is over, which was never in the bylaws before, and which was a huge mistake, because it meant to get national money, Wilson needed our endorsement. But he couldn't get it early enough to get that funding because of that provision in the bylaws. When push came to shove, when the chair realized he can't get that money, she can't get money from the nationals because of that, then instead of fixing the bylaws and taking that out, she held an illegal meeting of the DSCC, suspending and ignoring her bylaws, and endorsed him when the bylaws didn't allow it.
After she installed the bylaws.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And the endorsement process that was put into this current bylaws are a mess, and they've created a lot of dissension, and they've sabotaged many of our candidates. They sabotaged Gary Chambers that way. They tried to sabotage Devontae Lewis, and in the past, when there were endorsements, the whole DSCC would look at our slate of Democrats in the races, the statewide races that we endorse in, and the candidates would come to speak, and then we would vote on who to endorse. And the executive committee would make recommendations, but the whole DSCC got to vote on that. Well, they put this provision in the bylaws, and they put it in such a way that's kind of like a poison pill. It's hidden in there, that the executive committee, their recommendation, their endorsement stands, period. And the DSCC has no say-so unless somebody on DSCC nominates someone else at least 5 days before the full endorsement meeting. Well, it was so strangely worded in the bylaws, and it had been rushed through. Nobody caught that during the time period where Gary Chambers was running for Senate, and Luke Mixon and Sarita Stibe. And so Gary Chambers got the endorsement of the executive committee, but Katie didn't want him, the chair did not want him to have the endorsement, so she changed the rules in the middle of the endorsement meeting, which was insane. Created chaos. resulting in, they gave us two options. We could endorse 3 of the U.S. Senate candidates or endorse no one, which made no sense. So we helped John Kennedy get back in, which should never have been.
Take a little break real quick, and we're here with Kathy Hurst, who is running for the DSCC Parliamentarian Executive Committee leadership elections. Now, Kathy, we were just talking about the chaos that's happening within the Democratic Party right now, with the way the bylaws are just confusing, hard to follow, puts the executive committee unintentionally against the rest of the DSCC, because they just have the main voice right now. And so as a parliamentarian, tell me if I'm wrong, your main role though is helping create the bylaws and enforce them?
It's definitely one of the roles is to formulate the bylaws. The bylaws do make the parliamentarian automatically the chair of the bylaws committee. Okay. And so with that person, that role is overseeing any revisions to the bylaws that are proposed to the DSCC. Now look, the bylaws prior to 2020 were a mess. But under this current term, they made a bigger mess. They created worse bylaws than we had before, which I didn't think was possible. They messed up the endorsement process, giving the executive committee way too much power over the governing body. The parliamentarian, the current one, increased his own power in the bylaws, which shouldn't have happened, and just made some colossal revisions that are not helping Democrats. And I'll give an example. There's a list of things that members of the DSCC can be censured for, basically admonished for. Yeah. And one of the provisions used to be that if a DSCC member publicly supported or endorsed a Republican when there was a Democratic candidate in the race, they could be censured for that. They took that out. Why would we take that out? Why would we want our DSCC members to be sabotaging our Democratic candidates by publicly endorsing and supporting Republicans? That shouldn't have been taken out. It should be put back in. So
another example of how the current party is just not motivating Democratic candidates. I mean,
right. If you think the governing body can sabotage you and endorse your Republican opponent, why put yourself out there? Because it's a hard thing to put yourself out for a public office, and to recruit candidates, we have to make sure they're treated fairly, respectfully, and that we're not going to sabotage them. And that's
we have their backs, right?
We should have their backs. Yeah. They shouldn't have to worry about that. And over the last 4 years, there's been a lot of sabotaging our own.
Yeah. So as hopefully you'll be the next parliamentarian, what would you like? How are you going to change that?
Well, I definitely have some revisions to the bylaws in mind. The endorsement process needs to be fixed. One of the things that needs to be fixed is taking out the provision they added in 2022 that says we can't endorse a candidate until after qualifying. When you're talking about a governor's race, you are setting them up not to be able to get national funds from the DNC, and by the time qualifying is over, which is in the summer, it's really too late.
Yeah, it's not enough time.
Trust me, the Republicans wasted no time endorsing Jeff Landry. They did it from the jump. The minute he announced, that was it. He was their candidate.
They were doing it for years.
Right. And whereas the election was in November and our qualifying was in July, Wilson was left where he couldn't get our endorsement. Yeah. Now, instead of fixing the bylaws, the chair held a meeting ignoring and suspending her own bylaws, which is, it's not a thing. You can't just ignore your bylaws. And speaking of that, we are required to have at least 3 meetings a year, and the chair has only called 2 meetings a year. We're not even complying with our own bylaws.
So it's a lot of inactiveness and a lot of just plain ignoring of bylaws that were originally meant to help function and keep the party moving.
Correct.
But now it's become so twisted that it's like our feet are nailed to the floor. We can't move and we can't help each other out.
Right, and the parliamentarian, in addition to any revisions to the bylaws and overseeing the bylaws committee, also rules on any parliamentary issues in meetings. And if the bylaws are silent, then Robert's Rules of Order kick in, and it's up to the parliamentarian to create, to make sure that we're running in an orderly fashion. And the current parliamentarian, I'm not sure if they're running again, but in our meeting in March of 2022, was literally threatening to remove DSCC members for speaking their opinion. And I mean threatening to remove with an armed guard. That should never have happened, and that should not be the way our meetings are run.
I would 100% agree, especially when he or they did not put them in office. The people did. The voters did. I agree there should be some censorship if someone gets out of order, of course.
Right.
But to be threatened that because you spoke your opinion or your mind.
And nobody was out of order.
Yeah, of course.
Nobody was.
It was just against what they were thinking.
As an attorney, I'm in our state board leadership, and we meet twice a year. And you can imagine, lawyers by our nature, we're a little assertive and aggressive, people to begin with. Yeah.
Oh.
And we usually, we'll usually have our January meeting at the Renaissance. You have a ballroom full of lawyers.
That's why it's your preference when you come down to Baton Rouge.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And guess what? Those meetings are orderly. Nobody's acting out of control. And they're run very professionally. Yeah. People are very civil. And there's no one threatening anybody, and there's no armed guard. And so, frankly, I was pretty shocked at the DSCC meetings being so out of control at times.
Yeah.
And under the prior chair, when I only attended one meeting in 2019 after I was appointed, because there was only one meeting after I was appointed.
Yeah, the COVID.
Yeah, it wasn't like that. At all. It was an orderly meeting, and it proceeded as I expected it to.
Kathy, in closing, tell our viewers, again, one last strong reminder about why you should be on the executive committee as the DSCC parliamentarian.
Well, I would like the meetings to be run in an orderly, professional fashion, like they should be. I am a member of the State Bar Association House of Delegates, which is similar to the DSCC in that it's elected representatives of the different districts, and I know what an orderly meeting is supposed to look like and how it's supposed to be run. I have specific training in Robert's Rules of Order, and I'm very familiar with the bylaws. I have, over the last 4 years, been what some people describe as a watchdog over the bylaws to call out whenever we're not complying with our bylaws. And we shouldn't have to be fighting to make our party follow our own bylaws.
Of course.
And one of the main reasons I'm running is to fix the bylaws, that they have completely created a mess with the bylaws. The endorsement process they put into place is sabotaging our Democratic candidates. And that cannot continue. Yeah. We need to fix that for our candidates. And also, we need to limit the power of the chair, and we need to limit the power of the parliamentarian. The parliamentarian put greater power for themselves in the meeting. That should never have happened, in my opinion. A parliamentarian is not supposed to govern the meeting. They're supposed to make sure it's in compliance with the bylaws and keep it orderly, and they're not supposed to have some special control role as the current parliamentarian put into place for himself while he was parliamentarian. Which that shouldn't be, and it should be a fair process for everybody involved.
So it sounds, you put up a strong case, and just to let you guys, the viewers know, Louisiana Blue Team has formally endorsed Kathy Hurst as the Parliamentarian candidate. She is our progressive candidate. She's also a board member with Louisiana Blue Team. And you put up a strong case. I mean, you gave us examples throughout this interview about how the party has really sabotaged and disenfranchised and not motivated people in Louisiana to step up and say, yeah, I'll run for office. Because like you said, it's tough. I mean, I ran for DPEC. I didn't win, but I had support of Louisiana Blue Team. And that should be the same type of support that the Louisiana Democratic Party should give to much larger races.
Absolutely. We should not be sabotaging our own candidates.
No, not at all.
We should not be allowing the party chair, whoever that party chair is, to take their own personal favorites and favor them over other Democrats when there's been no endorsement or weighing in of the party. And that's happened. Money's been used on certain Democrats against other Democrats. Our postage rate, which is a federally, we're granted a special bulk rate. That was used to favor one Democrat over another without the governing body weighing in. And all those things needs to be put in our bylaws to tighten it up. And also, we need, the bylaws to be followed. That should be a basic, but unfortunately they haven't been.
Yeah. Well, Kathy, thank you so much for taking your time out of your very busy schedule. I know as a still practicing attorney, you are very busy, and we really appreciate it. Thank you for being a board member with Louisiana Blue Team. Thank you for stepping up, not just via DSCC, but to be parliamentarian. So all our viewers, thank you for coming to our first Louisiana Blue Team Hits the Road.
The greatest, I love you.